Congratulations. Finally, you got the job in the company where you always wanted to work in, and you are ready to submit your first code review. And you are a little nervous. And you are nervous rightly so, because these code reviews in these big companies are pretty brutal. The quality bar is high, and your code may not only be looked by some senior engineers, but staff level engineers may also look at your code. And depending on the quality of the code, your future will be decided. You may get a bonus or a promotion, or you may not remain part of this company. So take the code review very, very seriously, because these reviews define your future in the companies. So in this session, I'm going to share some tips and tricks and talk about some tools which can help you improve the quality of your code. Now, I would like to repeat, this session is not for an expert level dev who already know Python and he is coding at expert level. This session is for people who are just starting their career. So the first thing first you can do is when you're submitting the code, make sure that you have a proper formatting of your code. And by that, what I mean is there are tools which will help you do that. Just don't go manually trying to format your code. Of course, once you will keep using this tool for a couple of weeks and months, you may become as good as the tool itself. So first thing is formatting. So first thing you should do is you should format your document. This is the lowest hanging fruit. Just by formatting your document, you can improve your document readability and look and feel by, I think, 200, 300%. Suddenly your code will look as if written by some expert. As you can see in this code, here I have an extra space and there's no space after this equal to, and then here I have a space. There's no consistency in this code. There's an extra space after this parenthesis. Here's extra space before parenthesis. You see, this is no consistency and there are spaces extra here and there, and then I'm here comparing with none. All these things are there. So let's format the document. To format the document, let's get something called AutoPep 8. So you can do this, pip install AutoPep 8, and then you can start using it in your VS Code. But let's do a better and easier way to get the extension AutoPep 8. So here's the extension. This is the VS Code extension that applies, and you can go ahead and install it. So once it's enabled, so once it's installed, I can come and just format the document by going to View Command Palette, Control Shift P, and click Format the Document, which is Shift Alt F. So let's do it this way. So you can see the changes happening here. You can see there's extra space and all. So I will say Shift Alt F. So in one shot, it made my document look much, much better. It's formatted the document. Now, this AutoPep has a lot of other details here at the documentation page. You can go and look at it. It fixes many things. You can see this list of things it fixes. One interesting thing it does is, as you can see in my code, I have this username equal none. It can even fix this. So it's not only about formatting the document, but it can improve your code also. So if I type this, AutoPep 8 in place, aggressive and user py, I'm giving the file name, and then just run this, you see this equal sign is changed to is none. Now I still see something here because it is caught by my linter. He's not happy about it. So we'll talk about linter in a few minutes, but let's continue on about formatting the doc. We were talking about aggressive. What does this switch mean in this command prompt? So if you go here, you will see use multiple aggressive to increase the aggressiveness level. So for example, E712 require aggressiveness level 2. So you can write aggressive, aggressive, dash, dash. So E712, fix comparison with Boolean. See, it fixed this thing, comparison with none for me, 711. But if you want to fix this, you go double aggressive. As it says here, use multiple aggressive. So that means you can do this, double aggressive, and you can run this way. So the other thing we should quickly look at, control comma. Here I'm looking at the settings and look at format the document, formatting, and let's go down to Python, and you can see formatting using AutoPep 8 path. So I have AutoPep installed here, my extension, so it's just showing here, but if you have installed it somewhere else, you can give this path. So this is the best thing you can do for your code. You must run the code formatter before you do anything else. So this is step number one, lowest hanging fruit, format your document. So the best is to configure this document formatter run automatically when you're saving the document. So you don't have to do anything, no typing the command, no clicking around, nothing. So to do that, you go control comma, so come here and say format on save. And here, check mark, just click this. And that's it. Once that's clicked, it will start running the doc formatter whenever you are saving the document. So this is about formatting the document. You can go ahead and read more about it from this website. There's a lot of options are there, but just to keep things very simple, just configure it to format your document, run it automatically when you're saving, and this is it. It will save you a lot of pain and it will improve your document by many, many folds. And now the second thing is linting. So formatting was about how the code is formatted, and linting is about the style. Linter are software code which will go through your code and find out the syntax or style issues. So let's look at how you can enable the linter for your VS Code. So go here, Control Shift P, and then click here, select linter, and if it does not come, type select linter. As you can see, it shows on the top. Now you have multiple options for linters, Flake 8, MyPy, PyLint, all those. And you can keep playing with all different linters. So let's start with PyLint. So once I'll click on this, it has chosen now my linter as PyLint. So let's create a RC file for PyLint, and that you can create this way. PyLint generate dash RC file equal to PyLint RC, and you press enter. So once you will press enter, it will create. I'm not pressing enter because I already created and I changed a couple of things to show you. But if you just press enter, it will go and create this PyLint RC file for you. And it have a bunch of things, bunch of rules are there. Like here, it's saying callback must have a name like this. List of string which can identify a callback function by name. A callback name must start or end with one of those strings. So there are a bunch of rules are here which you can turn on and off, and we'll look at one by one. So here, if you see my code, it's giving me a lot of issues. So one is I see if I click here, it says unused variable employee lint. This is the PyLint hint you are getting, which is saying unused variable. So you see it is catching the unused variable for you. And so basically you shouldn't be using this variable, but it's still, if you want to shut down this warning, you can update your RC file. So let's not shut down this one because this is good. So it's better to get rid of this. And let's look at other issues. Here it's saying missing function or method docstring. PyLint missing function docstring. This hint is getting from the lint saying I must have a docstring. But I don't care. This is a small file. I don't want this warning to be there for my function. I want the docstring for the module level, but for the function, I would like to turn it off. So what I can do, I can go to my PyLint RC file, look for the disable, and which is here, and then come here and just add missing function docstring. And let's go back, and you see that error should have gone. Now it says unused variable login. Okay, means this is not used anywhere. So let's go and search. Wow, see, it's catching, the lint is catching that I have a method which is not called by anybody. So that's the beauty of lint. So here's another thing. It's saying disallow name foo. These names are not allowed for me to use it. And again, if I go and search in my RC file, here, bad names. So it's catching my bad name. So you see here, other things like snake case, my method name and argument style, all those should be in snake cases. So let's look at what other errors are there here. It says doesn't conform to snake case naming style. Okay, so select this, Control Shift P, and say snake case transform to snake case, and it has changed. So take this method name, apply, it's done here. Unused variable foo. So this I put only just to show the user how you can see that some methods you can put in a list which is not allowed to be used, like foo. And let's get rid of this. Here's another one. The global name doesn't conform to uppercase. So as you can see, this F2, select that and say F2 and then change it to CNX. As you can see, linter is catching so many issues in your code. Here's another issue I want to show you in this code where it is saying redefining name client from outer scope. So here I defined a global variable and then I'm defining it here. Of course, this code will run because client will become local to this one for this method. But it is telling you that there's an issue in your code. This is not a good code to write this way. So take it out from it being the global and bring it here. So that message is gone. Now, of course, there are many issues in this code, but the idea was here to show you how the linting can help you make your code better. So I just showed you with PyLint, there's a flake lint is also there, and you can go here, control, comma, and then you can type lint here, and you can go to Python, and then you can see these things. Click this lint on save. So whenever you are saving, it will run the linter. And then here is Flake 8 enable. You can enable this linter also. And then it shows you all different kind of linters are there. I have enabled PyLint enable. So this is in short about linting. So far we checked two things: format your code and lint your code. These two things will improve your code big time. So please don't forget to enable these two things. Okay, now after formatting and linting, now let's go through the list of few things which we should do to make our code review much better. So the first thing is write a very good title and the description for all your pull request. You will not believe how much and what a big difference this will make. If you don't have a very nice, clear title, that itself will, piss off some senior engineers. Take some time, think about the title, write a proper description in your pull request. This will really help you a lot. So don't take it very lightly. Just don't write test and submitting PR, things like that, generic sentences. This one tip will help you a lot. So write a very good title and description for all your PRs. Many companies will have a proper template to submit your PR, but even if you don't have a template, you should follow a template. Ask your senior engineers that how I should write the description for any of your PR. So make sure you take care of that and keep your title very descriptive and very nice. Comment the code. Now, this thing, nobody should be even telling you that you must comment the code. But here's the thing, you should comment the code very intelligently. By that I mean, if you are writing a code where your function name itself is very clear, it tells you what you're doing, 3-line code, you shouldn't write a 6 line of comment on top of it. So if it's self-evident, no need to write the comment. But if your function is doing something complex, which is not very clear looking at it, that's the time you write the comment. So there are tools which help you look at the comment of the function when somebody is calling, so he should be able to see what this function do. So use a little bit of your own judgment while commenting the code, but it's very important. If you make somebody reverse engineer to understand your code and there's no comment, that's a bad thing. So make sure you go through in your mind that whether comment is not needed by looking at your function, how complex it is. Okay, so here one example. This method says it's a bubble sort. There's no need to write this function is a bubble sorting. This is not the comment I'm talking about. It's very self-evident that this function is doing bubble sort. So there's no need to write this comment. But if I'm looking at this sum method and I don't know what all it's doing, it's better to write, okay, it's a recursive function. This function will read the user from pages and fill user list after validating them with master list and things like that. So user don't have to reverse engineer your code to understand. So keep that thing in mind. That's how you should write the comments. So this is the biggest mistake you can make as a beginner programmer. If you made this mistake, you will really fall in the eyes of senior engineers. Nobody respects a dev who will write a try catch, try except block where the except block is empty. This is the biggest mistake you can do. Never ever do that. If there's nothing you want to do that, at least print that thing, because this is a biggest sin you can do in coding Word. So let's look at the code. So this is what I'm talking about. If you have nothing happening in this catch block, this is not acceptable. If you don't want to do anything, at least print that I got an error. So in worst case, at least do this much, that you print that there's an exception happen. But really what you should do is you should catch a very specific exceptions and handle them. Sometime you catch those exceptions to log, log the error or try to correct the error and then continue on. And you can see that there is a big list of exceptions are listed here in Python org. If you go python.org, you will see the list of exceptions. So try to catch a very specific exception for your code. The more specific you are, the better you will be. So the next is submit small chunk of code for your pull request for the PR. Make sure that you create PR every day. You have just couple of functions. So plan accordingly. Don't just sit back and keep coding for a week or months and then submit a PR with 20, 30, 40, 50 files. Sometime if you are doing a big refactoring or things like that, maybe you have to touch 40 files or so. But as a new dev, try to submit the PR every day, because when you submit the PR, you will get a feedback and then you will fix, you will learn. So it's a good idea to submit PR every day. And keep the function small. If your function is getting bigger than 40 to 50 lines, means you better rewrite it or break into multiple functions. So keep the function small, create small PR, and submit them continuously. Now, let's look at some of the coding issues. When we are writing Python code without this main, where the name is equal to main, you can write the code and it will run. But never submit any code which is not telling you where the code is starting from. So let's look at one example. So we are looking at a simple code which is taking a user input, taking 5 numbers and then doing a sorting. By the way, you don't have to use this kind of code, bubble sort and all in Python. There's a sort function is there. Anyway, we are just trying to prove here a point that this simple code has many, many issues, and we'll go over one after another. First of all, it doesn't tell me where this code starts from. So always have this thing that name equal to main and then call the main function. And now let's go and define the main function. The main function can be here. This. So as you know, in Python, this name is a variable which will have the value. This main will change depending on the context. If you're running this file and this is the only file you're running, then the name value will be main, and you check that, okay, this is the file we are running, and then you call the main function. And so this is the starting point, and then the main function will be called and everything will be happen. Now, if this function BubblePy is called as a module, then this name variable will be bubble. It will not be main. So there are a lot of information is there on the web or on YouTube, so you can see, but my point here is to make sure every time you write a code, you clearly define where your code is starting from. So never forget this line. This is important. Okay, let's look at the second thing, which is reduce your global variable. There's no bigger sin in coding than using global variable. Almost always there's no need to have global variable. If you are having global variable, you are missing something. Like here in this code, you can see I have this global variable and array or a list of called A. It's hanging out in A out of these methods as a global because it is used here and then it is used down in the main. And that's why the people who are learning often to save some thinking at their end, they just create the lot of global variables. So never have a global variable. So how we can fix this is bring this variable inside main, and when you are calling get user inputs, you can pass this here, and you can get this thing here in get user input, and this is how it will work. Okay, so important point, never have a global variable. Always, in most of the cases, you never need a global variable. Now let's look at what other issues we have in this code. Name your variables smartly. If it is a list, call it with plural, example documents. So look at our code. So look how we call this variable A. Horrible name, horrible name. You can call, X or Y or I or J like that when you are just using it in one or two line. But if a variable which is going around in different methods and all, you should give it a better name. So let's call it numbers. Here's another trick. Now I change the name to nums. Now I have to go and change wherever the A is, right? So what you should do here, let's go back and select this variable and press F2. This is renaming, and then say nums, and you see it's changed everywhere. Of course, it didn't change here. Let's change it here to F2 nums. So it changed here also. So always use these small tricks of your editor. It saves a lot of work from your end. The next one is always define parameter types and return type of a function. So if you will look at your code, this code is running. This code is running. There's no problem in there. But it is always a good idea to define what are the parameters and what is coming back. This habit of yours will help you a lot. You will be able to catch these errors in the compile time itself. And when somebody is looking at your code, will also understand that's what's happening. So always make a habit. Even Python does not insist on you defining the parameter type and the function return type, but you should make a habit that you define it. So this is what I was talking about. Always define the parameters of your functions. Use constants. There should not be ever a magic number in your code. Again, all these things I'm talking about, very small things, but if you make these mistakes, this may damage your reputation, and it will take months and years to repair your reputations with the senior engineers. Now this thing, use constants, right? Never have any magic number in your code. Here, you look, I'm using 5 here. This is just an example, but you may have a code where you're using some number. First of all, if there's ever any magic number, make sure it's coming out of a config. So once the code is released in production, you can change the configuration and the behavior of function will change. But if you have to have a constant number, have it in a constant file. So what you can do is you can define this 5 in a constant file, call it max element equal to 5, and come back to this file, and here you can say import constant as constant, and then use this way max element. Now you see, anybody looking at this code understand, oh, this is the maximum element. You can give some description to that number, the value of pi or circumference of your circle or number of days and whatever you want. And all that constants are defined in one file. so people can go and change in one file this number. We don't have to go and search all around in our code wherever the magic number is. Okay, so the quick recap: never have a global variable. Name your variable very smartly. Don't call them A, B, C, things like that. Define parameter types, return type, use constants. So let's see what the next tip is. Don't check true and false and then return, but just return the expression. Like write smart code. I'll show you what I mean by looking at the code. So before we go to the code, here's another thing. Don't have if then else nested. Too many nested if then else creates also a problem, but just use ifs. So let me show these two tips in code where I don't have to have too many nested if then else and return true and false by the expression, not by checking and then returning it. So if I look at the code, so here is my code. This code is saying it's just some complex function, taking 3 values, returning bool. Here, as you can see, it's doing some if, then, else, and all those things. Now let's see how we can make it much better. First of all, a quick sign for you is if you see too many indent, too many these lines, you're going away from your left edge. It means you can refactor this code, because I just put here something, but generally in the real code, real world code, you will see a lot of things and it's become very difficult to figure it out what to do. So here are the few things you can do with this code. So now let's see what we can do with this code. As you can see, if x is less than 10, do all this, else we are checking again if x is well greater than 10 and all. So the point here is don't focus too much on the code because it's just for illustration purpose, right? So we can get rid of this else here. It's not needed at all. What we can do is we can save one indentation here, right? If x is equal to 10, then you do all this. And here you do this. So now, as you can see, we start simplifying it, right? If x is less than 10, I'm only focused till this much. And if x is greater than this, I'm focused only on this much. Now, even now, this code, the way it is written, it's a little complex. So let's see what we can do here to simplify this. One thing we can do is we can get all this checking of y outside of this method. Remember, we talked about don't have a method which is very long. Always have a smaller function. So let's say return check y, and we're going to write this check y here and do define check y and z, taking this, and here is my y. It's doing something. Now, in place of doing one line at a time, what you can do is in VS Code, Shift, Control, and Alt, and then down arrow, and then you can say delete. So it can delete all the rows together. So we did this, check y, so this becomes small. Similar thing you can do here also for this guy, and of course it will be a little different because it's checking something, so it may be check y2 or something. But for now, because we want to just prove a point that you write another function, now this becomes very small function, right? This, when I'm looking at this function, I know, oh, okay, if x is this and do this, otherwise do that, it's become much simpler to wrap your head around. One other thing we are seeing, if x is blah, then return true. This is another thing. This was another tip. Why do this? Just say return this and get rid of this line. You see, this will return true or false, whatever the value of z is, right? Same thing you are doing here, return false, else return true. Again, you don't have to do all that, and you can do this, return this. So this is how you simplify your code. Don't ever have a long, big function. Don't have too many indentation doing if, then, else, and all that. Break those things into if. It's much easier to understand when you're looking at the code. Okay, let's see what's next. You should never have a same name of a variable in a function and the same name in the global. It's a very simple suggestion. I don't think even it's needed to tell anybody, but I have seen code where people have used the global variable and then inside the function they're using the same name of a variable, and this creates an issue. This creates an issue when it's least expected. Here, look at this code. This is one of my global variable, horrible name, horrible idea to have a global variable. And then I'm having same name of a variable inside a function which is the same name. Just don't do it. Simply, I don't have to even explain the reasoning why you should not do it. I'm just saying simply don't ever do these things. Forget about the ramification. Go figure it out. Just go write 4 lines of code and see how this whole idea of having the same name of variables in global and inside function can create issues for you. And this will create bugs late in the game when there are too much code around these things. This is no more 4 lines of code. This may be 40,000 lines of code. And then you will break your head figuring out why something is not working. So don't do it. Next is don't import star, because we import a lot of functions and methods from different library, different modules. Never import everything. Don't say star because it will pollute. So let's see one example I have here. So I have a auth function which has, different methods, all those things. And then I have a file which is importing auth. Now here I am importing star because I have to get this get login string from auth. But what's happening now, it is importing everything, all the methods. And it's fine because just 2 files, you can see, not a big deal. But if you have a lot of code here, you may start having some name which may conflict with auth method. So be very deliberate. The way you are supposed to do in try catch, very deliberately you catch the exception. Same way when you are importing, very deliberately just import the methods which you need. Okay, don't import things which you don't need it. So be deliberate here. This is again a very common sense suggestion. Read config in one place. So often I see that we have written code which is having more than 50 files, and all these different files are reading the config values. Remember the tip I gave you about the constant, that keep all the constant in one file? Same way, read config somewhere in the start of the code at one place, and then in the whole code just use that module everywhere to get the value of the config. Don't try to read it everywhere. Don't pollute your code. You should be just looking at the code, what it is doing exactly, and you don't have to know about how I'm reading the config, and you're importing the library to read the config and things like that. So read the config in one place. This brings us to this dry principle. Don't repeat yourself. And I seen many times, I made myself this mistake also when I was not paying attention, that you write a very similar code 2, 3 different places. A very big mistake. The don't repeat yourself means you should write a one piece of code in one place, and that module library, that function should be used from all around. The code which is trying to call that function should call maybe with different parameters if it need to do different things, but don't have a similar code repeated in different modules and in different places. Never do that. Very, very bad practice. So don't repeat yourself. See if there's a code repeated all around, bring it into one function, refactor the code. That's what refactoring means. This is an important one. And these small things will suddenly take your code to a senior level code. Now let's talk about looping the Python way. So let's look at the code. So now let's look at this code. I have a list of numbers. Okay, I have these numbers, and now I want to loop and write a, whatever there in the list. So one way, this is what I'm doing. Okay, now let's call this function. So let's run this method. It's doing very simple. It's just taking the list and printing the index of the list and the value of the list. So as you can see, it just said 0, 1, blah, blah. Now, if I want to write it, this is not the right way to do things in Python, because Python gives you much simpler way to do things. So one way is you can do this. Okay, let's run this. Working. So what we did, we get rid of one extra variable and updating that variable and things like that. Let's see how we can write now this method in a more Python way, because Python has this concept of list comprehension. Using that, what we can do is we can write something like this. For I, this. So you see now, let's run this. Okay, it's running. So all this is gone in one line. So what is it doing is it is actually still enumerating the list, getting the value, and then the index ID. And then we can write this, print this method here, and with the square bracket, it's again a list. So this is the list comprehension. So what happens if I just say print here? Let's see what will happen. Let's go ahead and run this. So it has printed this list, as you can see, and then it has printed none, none, none. What does this mean? This none has come out of this print. So it is gave me a list of none, and the reason is it is executing this method. It created a list with the execution of this method. So if I remove the say print from here and just say resource multiplied by 10, right? And then let's run it. So you see it now created a list of this thing. So anyway, coming back to where we started from, now this is, get rid of this print, here it is. Now imagine I want to print the list where I want to get the number which is more than 50. To do that, again, generally what we'll do, we do, for loop and check the value, and then say print if, then else, and all that. Other than this, here in Python, you can do this. 50. So here, see, if I run it, it just print if the value is more than 50. So this is a different way of looping. Now, another thing you can do is, now here we are doing the print. Let's do this. You can do a lambda processing also on every element. By that I mean, so let's say, let's get rid of everything here. Now we are printing, we take a list, and on the list we map, and we map for lambda, and this is what we are doing. So what's happening here? We take the value from the list for x in list, and then this x we pass to this lambda, and this lambda does thing on it. It can be anything. This can be your complex big function, and then it return a list, and this printer will print it. So let's see what we are doing. It we are just multiplying it by 2. One more thing we can do, we don't need this guy also for x in list. Let's see. You see it's multiplied by 2. What's happening? Taking the list, passing the x value to the lambda, and lambda is doing whatever it needs to do. That's what the map will do. It maps every element to this lambda, and then you turn it into a list, and then you print. So you can do a lot of very smart thing with Python and list. One another important thing is you can create generators. So when say, let's see how generator works. So let's say my generator, and this generator is basically just doubling the element. Okay. So when you want to print anything here, what I can do is I can say my generator, right? So we'll talk about the benefit of generator in a minute. Let's see if we run it. It's giving me a problem because it's saying it has generated object as a generator. So what's happening? Let's look at the code. So what is generator? Generator basically takes the list and yield every element. It will yield when I'll call on generator in next, then it will give me the next value from the list, and then it will wait. So the benefit of this is if you have million, 2 million, 2 billion numbers, it will give you one number at a time. So there's no memory pressure on the method. So let's see if I say next here, will this will work? Good. So it got me 20. So it returned the generator, and call next on the generator, it gives me the number, right? So now what I can do is if I want to get all the numbers from the generator, I can do this list, map it to the list, and then let's see if it works. Yeah, so it returns all the numbers. So the benefit of the generator is just that it doesn't only return the next element at a time when it is asked for, called for, but you can do a lot of advanced processing on every element too. So this generator now it is multiplying by 2. I can do 4 or 5, whatever, and you can imagine that you can have very complex function here, and this generator will return that element with a processed value. So here the point is that Python gives you a lot of power to manipulate list, and you should use that and forget about whatever you learn from other languages, how to manipulate list. So stay tuned. I may add to this playlist more videos about those small tips and tricks, things I want to add, like how you can add caching, decorators to your Python code. All these codes will help and enhance your code performance and the readability and reduce the complexity. So let me know if you have any more questions. I will be happy to answer them, and leave some comments and give me suggestions what other videos you would like to see it in future from. Thank you. Thank you for your time.